Hmm? Oh, hi, it's you again. Welcome back. In this.
Oh, hi, I'm Marc. I'm a professional artist, an art teacher, and in this week's episode of my series for artists I call YouTube Art School, I'll explain how you can start practicing drawing less, yet improve faster. It took me 17 years as a professional artist to figure this stuff out and understand it enough to lay it out in a video like this for you. It's not magic, but it almost feels like it. Uh-oh, quickly, let's get this class started. Alright, class is in session. Pay attention. You hear me? If you're an artist, you owe it to yourself to know what I'll discuss in this video. My students, along with most people asking questions about being an artist and art education in general, all want to know, how long does it take to get good? Like, how much work does it take? And it's normal. It's a good question. Can you seriously become an artist, maybe even a professional artist, if you don't have like 80 hours a day to dedicate to practicing art? Or 8 hours even. What if you only get 1 hour a day? Is that dream just out of reach for you? Well, I wouldn't be making a video if the answer was no, would I? I personally practice around 1 to 2 hours a day on average now. Far less than what I used to practice when I was working at Blizzard, for example. Yet, I'm improving way faster than I used to. What gives? Can you replicate this too and get better faster by practicing less? Oui. Allow me to explain how in just a few simple steps. After you've paid the class fee of either 1 like or 1 sub, it's not free, but also not very expensive. Do it now. We'll start the class with the practical part. How to structure your art practice or art study. The art learning method. Next, we'll talk about arguably the most important part, your mind, and how you can trick your brain to be a better artist. And then finally, we'll take a look at exactly what to focus on to maximize your art gains without working harder, or by potentially working less. It's all of these 3 concepts combined that make this so powerful. It's the artist's triforce to get better faster. It's what I do now as an artist, and I've never seen better results in my entire career. Of course, I didn't just invent all of this. It's all based on science, psychology, but also decades of experience, many years of research and teaching, thousands of students, literally. Still, it's just a tiny fraction of the stuff that I teach in my art program to fit a 10-minute YouTube video. Nice segue. Because if you're interested in a full art education from home, if you like how I teach, you'll find a coupon in the video description for a huge discount on my art program, valid until the end of the month only. We're closing in on 9,000 students, many of which, by the way, are working for the biggest studios in the world. I have students from Blizzard, Riot Games, DICE, CD Projekt Red, Ubisoft, Rockstar Games, Valve, and the list goes on. Yet, it's also built for complete beginners. Check it out. I'm very proud of it. But plug aside, that didn't sound right. Plug aside, let's look at the art learning method right now. This alone is a game changer. So simple yet so effective. It's the same I teach to all my students, and here's how to practice art. It's a 3-step process, but there are 2 versions of the process. When you're starting to study something new, here's how to approach it. Here's version 1. Initially, just copy what you see, either from life or from photo reference. You don't need to know much. Just do your best and try to represent your subject as best you can in your drawing. Step 2, study the fundamentals of what you just copied. Learn more about what you just drew. Did it include anatomy, perspective, color theory? Look into it. Educate yourself. Find the answers to the questions you likely had while copying. And then step 3, finally, practice what you studied from imagination. Again, as best as you can. Then, following that, in version 2, we repeat the process while seeing things differently now. Instead of just seeing and copying what we see, we've learned more about the subject so we can observe better. We're now able to take in more information when looking at the same subjects or the same references. We've studied the relevant theory about our subject so we can start to construct our drawings with a solid structure rather than just copying what we see. It's similar but completely different. Moving forward, we'll only focus on version 2 of the process. And I recommend those as the new steps that you should follow when drawing anything for which you have more experience, more knowledge. No more copying, no more drawing without structure, without construction. So anyways, the new steps as you practice now should be, instead of copying what you see, construct what you observe. Observing is more than seeing. There's an analysis to the process now. Since you know more about the theory, you can understand what you see better. Then the second step's very similar. Study the fundamentals of what you observed instead of what you copied. And the final step is the same. Practice what you studied from imagination. Then rinse repeat those 3 steps until you're an art god. Easy. There's only 3 steps, but it's important you approach them differently depending on your experience on a particular topic. Version 1 as a beginner, version 2 when you have more experience. The next concept that's gonna allow you to improve faster while practicing less will be about your state of mind, essentially how good you are at focusing. There are many things that go into focus, but we'll look at 2 principles that I think will make the most difference. The first of the 2 being urgency. It's a well-researched fundamental of learning, how urgency makes everything you learn stick a lot better. It helps you retain a significantly greater portion of everything you learn. Imagine if everything you read you never forgot. You'd be a genius, right? Well, this principle taps into that idea. How do you learn and study with urgency though? There are a few ways. One being to learn as if you were to teach. I'm very familiar with that first one, obviously. It's probably what's made the biggest difference in my case. Learning with the intent to teach the material results in a massive sense of urgency where I want to make sure I understand everything, not cut corners so that I can then teach the content without embarrassing myself. You don't need to become a teacher to learn with urgency though. You could publicly announce that you're working on a project to put yourself on the spot and essentially jump into a situation where you have to perform or have your followers be disappointed in you. It could be a bet with someone, with your parents, that you'll get this or that if you succeed or lose something if you don't. It could be as simple as setting a clear goal for yourself, broken down into smaller goals, written on a schedule right next to your screen so you're always reminded of that goal and what you should be working towards. I can give you an example. Let's say you're planning a painting with a character fighting another one as your goal. The smaller goals could be to first practice gesture drawing and fighting poses to get better at that. Another smaller goal could be to study some relevant anatomy to make sure that the characters look good from their respective angles. Maybe have a design pass to figure out the designs of your characters before painting them in battle. All things that should contribute to making the final painting more successful. And I guarantee that you'll learn more effectively when studying those things compared to maybe someone who's practicing the same, but without the greater goal of a painting to reach for. The urgency is essentially the motivation behind your action. The bigger the stakes, the more your brain enters a fight or flight mode, and the more easily you retain information long term. Makes sense? And then the second principle I hinted at relates a lot to this too. It's to study deliberately. Simply studying isn't bad, but it's usually not very effective. The deliberate part, that word, changes everything. Deliberate study is study without distractions. You can listen to music and be distracted when you create art during the creative process. But when you study art, when you're trying to learn something new, you'll want to avoid any kind of distraction. Turn your phones off, close YouTube, well, not now though, keep watching this, and avoid all kinds of distractions when you study. Also, deliberate study means to study with a structure. Just studying random stuff isn't deliberate. You need a plan, a curriculum to follow, so there's a logical process from simpler notions that slowly build up to more complex notions. And I think that's the main strength of my art program, for example. It's structure. In a lot of my videos on YouTube too, I'll try to provide a structured path like this. Different steps to follow to learn the content faster, better. Study with urgency and study deliberately. Do it. And then finally, the last principle, the last piece of the Triforce, is called the Pareto principle, or the 80-20 rule. The 80-20 rule essentially says that 80% of outcomes are determined by 20% of the causes. Huh? Well, you can see this represented in real life in all sorts of situations, like in business, for example, where often 80% of the revenues are a result of only the top 20% of clients, the big spenders. Or maybe how 20% of the efforts that go into making a YouTube video, aka the thumbnail and the title, gets to dictate 80% of the video success. Or how in art, knowing 20% of the theory allows you to create 80% of what you can imagine. It's powerful stuff. It's basically the principle that says that you should work on learning and practicing what will give you the most results. Think about character design as an example. Knowing how to draw a cool hairstyle or how to draw facial expressions, the style of the eyes or the nose, etc. all those details are impossible without a character to build them on. The 80-20 rule here would indicate that it's best to learn how to draw the simple body first. Get good at that because that's 80% of the work that goes into creating most characters. For everything you learn, make an effort to understand the different skills that go into it and focus more of your time on those skills that will allow you to do more with them. And then what are those core art skills, you ask? Well, they're the art fundamentals, of course. Construction, perspective, gesture, anatomy, design, color and light theory, composition, and storytelling. So don't get lost on details that have very little impact on the end result. Focus on the few skills that will allow you to do the most. That's what I tend to focus on in my videos here on YouTube anyway, so if you're subscribed, you're already doing great. That's probably a big part of why you've been improving faster. Or maybe not. It's not always obvious what that 20% of input will give you 80% of the output, but it's such an important thing to try and find out if you want to get better faster, while also working less. Often in art, it'll mean ignoring the more extreme cases like studying really complicated poses or perspectives in favor of focusing your studies on those subjects you're more likely to draw most often, like neutral poses, simple perspectives, character construction, and getting real good at that first before moving on to anything else. Well, only if you want to get better faster, that is. Make sure you apply the art learning method. Study deliberately with urgency and always keep in mind the Pareto principle or the 80-20 rule to make sure that you're focused on what matters most. This way, you'll be able to practice less and improve faster. It's not magic, it's just a different approach. Or maybe you're already doing all of this. If so, good job. Also, good job on making it to the end of the class. As a reward, I'll be giving away one of my main brush sets for free, including the brush I used for today's drawings. You can grab it with the link in the video description if you haven't done so already. I even made a video on how to use them all. I'll put the link to that class in the description too. Check it out next. Happy drawing!
In this